This happened back when I was in high school a long time ago. We lived in this house that was way out sort of in the country. Our property was pretty large and we did have neighbors, but their houses were pretty far away. It was a quiet town located near some farms and things like that. That's what makes this story so strange. I was a freshman in high school at the time, and I remember that my parents had to go to this wedding that was out of state. They left me and my older sister home for just a few days because we still had school and stuff. On one of the nights that my parents were gone, my sister went to her friend's house. I wasn't really sure how late she would be gone or if she was staying overnight or what, but I was just hanging out at home. I remember that I made a frozen pizza and I was in the living room. Our house was sort of a split level, so the living room was upstairs. At about 9 o'clock at night, I heard a knock at our front door. Immediately, this was very strange. This might not be weird for a normal neighborhood, but way out there we never had anybody knocking on the door. Our driveway was also super long and far away from the street. There would hardly ever be any cars on the street if it wasn't someone who lived there, and nobody really lived that close to our house. And that, with the fact that I was home alone, made me very concerned. I didn't immediately get up and see who was there, but after like 10 seconds, whoever was there knocked again. So at that point, I got up and I went over to my bedroom, which happened to sort of overlook the front door area. It was above it, so I felt safer looking from there. When I got to the window and looked out of it though, there was nobody at the front door. I looked around near the area and I looked around the driveway as well. I didn't see anyone. I didn't think that whoever had knocked would have had enough time to go all the way back down the driveway by then. I couldn't see to the street though, because we had these thick pine trees like a line in the front edge of our yard. That made me nervous that perhaps the person had gone someplace else in our front yard or something. I had absolutely no idea who could have knocked on the door. It wasn't my sister because she had a key to get in. I just went back to the living room after that and hoped that everything would be fine. And it was for the most part. I'm not going to lie, I was pretty nervous as it got later and later. I went over and checked the windows a few times, but I never saw anybody. At like midnight, I was still awake and my sister got home. I was glad that she was back. However, when she got inside, she told me that there was a car parked outside on the side of the street. You couldn't really see it from inside the house because of the trees. I asked her if anybody was inside of it and she said that she couldn't tell. I told her about the knocks on the door. We figured that they had to be related, but thankfully nothing else happened. By the next day, the car was gone and there were no more knocks on the door or anything. It's still the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me when I was home by myself, though. Last year, I was living by myself in an apartment building. I lived on the second floor in a typical one-bedroom place. I worked many different hours at my job, and we usually get home sometime in the afternoon or night. On this night in particular, I left work sort of late. I just remember that I was tired and it had been a really long shift. I got back to my apartment, parked my car, and then went up to my place. When I went inside though, I realized that I had forgot my phone. It sometimes would fall out of my pocket when I was getting out of my car, usually on the driver's seat. I was annoyed but quickly left my place and went back down outside to the parking lot. I got my phone from inside of my car and then I went back in my apartment. After that, I was pretty tired. What I really wanted to do the most was just go to sleep, so I started to get ready for bed at that point. It was during this time that I thought I heard a noise from the other end of my apartment. I wasn't really 100% sure though because I was brushing my teeth. I didn't know for a fact if it was from inside my apartment or maybe from the neighbors next door. It really kind of sounded like it was from mine though. I stopped and then looked over but saw nothing. I didn't hear any other noises either, so I just continued to brush my teeth. After that, I went into my bedroom to go to sleep. Maybe it was because I was really tired, but I pretty much just completely brushed off the noise that I heard, or that I thought I heard. After going into my bedroom though, I was sure that I heard another noise. I couldn't really tell what exactly it was though. My lights were all off at this point now. I walked out of my bedroom and then I looked into the living room and kitchen area. The apartment was not that big, so if the lights were on, I would have been able to see the whole thing, but they were not. When I looked though, I saw that there was someone definitely walking through the living room towards the front end of the apartment. I was so surprised that I didn't know what to do for a second. I couldn't really see any details on them because all the lights were out, but I could just see the movement really. Then, as I was still standing there, I turned the light switch on. When I did, I suddenly saw a man who I did not recognize walking to the front door of my apartment. He quickly opened up the door and then went outside and left. After he was gone, I went over to the door and I locked it. I was so confused as to what had just happened. At first, I had no idea how the man got into my apartment, and I thought maybe he had been there all day. I figured that he had to have been hiding in the coat closet in order for me to not see him. I looked around and nothing was stolen or anything. I called the police and reported the incident. I was not tired at all anymore, but wide awake. When the police were there and I was talking to them, I remembered how I had forgot my phone in the car. When I went to get it, I was only gone for like a minute, if that, so I didn't lock my apartment door. That must have been how the man was able to get inside. I'm not sure if he had just been in the apartment building, or if he had maybe followed me home or something without me noticing. I hadn't been paying the greatest of attention to my surroundings. But after the police talked to me, they looked around the complex and were not able to find the man. I was really hoping that they would. Nothing else like that happened when I lived in the apartment. I moved and live in another apartment now. I live alone in a house and have lived here for 2 years now. This is an event that took place several months back and is still very fresh in my memory. So it was nighttime and I was alone in my house and in my bedroom. The house is not very large and my room is on the ground level. As I was watching TV and sitting on my bed, it was starting to get late and was maybe 11 or 12. Because it was late, things were very quiet aside from the volume on my TV, which was not that loud. All of a sudden, I heard this noise from the back end of my house. It sounded like maybe from the backyard, and it seemed like somebody had hit a back window. Before I could compute what was going on in my head though, I heard glass breaking. The sound was coming from the same area. Then I knew that somebody was breaking in. My first reaction at that point was to run to my bedroom door and lock it, which I did. I heard whoever had gotten in the house was still at the back side of it. Then my next course of action was to dial 911. I went over and located my phone, which was also on my bed. I quickly scrambled to dial for the police. Then I went to the back corner of my room. As soon as someone answered the phone, I said that my house was being broken into. I gave my address, but I spoke as quietly as I could. I didn't really hear anything during that time as far as where the intruder was, but maybe 30 seconds later, I heard the footsteps approaching the hallway where my bedroom is. Then, moments later, they arrived right outside my door. I muted the phone and tossed it aside in a panic. I didn't want them to hear me. Then the intruder tried opening my bedroom door. That got me really scared because I had hoped that maybe they wouldn't want to be seen. I felt like they knew I was in here, but possibly they just wanted to see what was in the room. Maybe they just wanted to steal stuff. But now they were coming straight for me. After the door did not open from being locked, I heard a loud man's voice. He yelled for me to open the door now. It was very angry, and of course, I was not going to do that. After a few seconds, he banged on the door very hard 2 times. At that point, I just wanted to get out of there. I debated trying to open my bedroom window and jump out of it, or I could look around and see if I had anything to use as a weapon. I didn't really have much of anything though. I was heading over to the window and the guy started to walk away. Then I stopped. If he was leaving, I didn't want to run into him out of the house. I wasn't sure where he was going though or what he was doing, but I was just moving off of instincts at that point. My mind barely was even thinking at all. I don't even know how long this went on, but I was basically just pacing around and listening for the man. I didn't really hear much though. After I have no idea how long, I heard my back door opening. Then, probably like 30 seconds to a minute later, I heard noises out front. I still thought that it was the man, but it was actually the police. They came inside and I finally left my room. After searching the house, the man had left out the back door just a short time earlier. Some other cops searched the neighborhood and were able to find the man. He was caught just a block away, which made me feel 100 times better. I didn't know who he was or why he chose to break into my house. I'm really glad that my bedroom door had a lock on it though. If not, I'm not sure what would have happened. I had a really strange event happen just last week. For some background, I live by myself and have an apartment. It's on the first floor of the building, but is still a little bit above the ground level. I was at home and having a relaxing night. However, it was all interrupted. I was just watching TV in the living room and eating when there was a knock at my front door. This was strange right away. I had never gotten a knock on my apartment door before. I've lived here for about a year, and nobody had ever knocked on my door to that point. I didn't even really know any of my neighbors or anything, so I had no clue why somebody would be at my door. Plus, it was like 10 p.m., so kind of late for that. My first thought was that it was possibly somebody at the wrong address. Still, I got up from the couch anyways and went over to look. When I got to the door, before opening, I chose to look through the peephole instead of opening the door, and I'm really glad that I did. Standing there was a man, or at least I thought it was a man, wearing a creepy old man mask. It almost looked real, and at first I thought it was an old man, but after a few seconds I could see how it was fake and a mask. It looked really weird. I obviously didn't know who this was, or why anybody would be knocking on my door dressed like this. I didn't answer the door, but I just kept watching him. After a short time, the guy knocked again. It was louder now. Then he just stood there looking right at my door. For a moment, I thought that he would somehow see that I was looking through the peephole. He seemed to be looking right at me. Then, after a little while of that, he turned and walked away. I thought that he might go and knock on someone else's door if this was a prank or something. However, I didn't hear any more knocking from the hallway. I was just relieved that he was gone, though. Seeing him at the door was one of the strangest things that I had ever seen. I went back to the couch and was watching TV again, feeling better. But maybe 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door again. It was the same guy. I went back over and looked, and he was there just like before. He knocked again. I, of course, was not going to answer the door, but I was very curious as to what he wanted. Then, to my surprise, he tried to open my apartment door, which was locked. This changed everything in my opinion. What would he do if he got in? I ran away from the door at that point, and I considered calling the police. However, I didn't hear anything more, and then went back over to look in the peephole again. He was gone now. So I put my phone down and I went back to the couch, hoping that he was gone for good this time. But he was not. It was later though, maybe 30 minutes to an hour. I was getting tired and about to go to sleep, but there was a loud knocking at my door again. I knew who it was. I didn't bother to go over to the door or anything. He knocked twice, and I did not hear anything after that for a while. It was only then that I finally went over to make sure that he was gone. He was, and I then finished getting ready for bed and went to my room. When I was in there though, I'm not really sure why, but I decided to look out of the window. It overlooks mostly the parking lot. It was very quiet now, but had many cars parked all over. However, on the sidewalk not far away, I saw the man with the old man mask standing there, and he was facing my apartment window. It creeped me out so much. I covered the windows again and then went into bed. I tried to fall asleep, but it was pretty tough to relax. After a long time, I was eventually able to go to sleep. Since then, I haven't seen the guy or anything, and I'm hoping that I never see him again. This happened back when I was a kid. I think that I was about 10 years old or so. I don't recall the exact year. It was a long time ago though, and I lived at home with my parents. One night they were out, and I was left home all alone. To be quite honest with you, I was kind of nervous about it. I'm sure that this wasn't the first time I was ever left home alone, but it did not happen often. It was probably among my first 5 times being left home alone. With it being nighttime, that made me nervous. My parents were not going to be gone that long though, and they were supposed to be back by 10. Well, for most of the night, I just watched TV in the living room. At one point, probably around 9, my parents were still gone and I was still watching TV. The living room was at the front of the house, with the dining room being connected to that. Then there was the kitchen at the back end, which was not visible to me on the couch. I remember hearing some sounds coming from the kitchen area, sort of like from the window. I didn't know what it was, but I figured that it was our cat. He was always snooping around and climbing up onto random places. He walked on the sink multiple times, which was right by the window that I thought I heard the noise from. There was no doubt in my mind that it was the cat, so I hardly paid the sound any mind at all. I was just relaxing watching TV, and I wasn't feeling nervous or scared, but the noises got a little louder and different. After zoning out of them for a few seconds, assuming it was still the cat, I snapped out of it. I realized that these noises were not caused by a cat. I didn't know what they were, but I knew that they were far too loud. Suddenly, I was nervous, but I still hoped that it was my cat somehow, some way. I got up and walked over to the dining room. During this entire time, the noises were continuing. When I got within a few feet to the kitchen, I saw the back window by the sink. It was open, but there was supposed to be a screen on it as well. However, I didn't see the screen. It looked like it was open right to the outside. And as I was watching, I literally saw the window get pushed open further. Then I saw a man start to crawl through. It was a sight that I will never forget. That's something that I really thought that I would never see. In an instant, I took off and I started running back into the living room. Then I went to the stairs and ran all the way up. I didn't stop until I got into my bedroom and I closed the door behind me. Back then, I did not have a cell phone or a phone in my bedroom. The only landlines that we had were downstairs. My parents had cell phones, but I couldn't reach them because I wasn't going to go back down there. I was terrified and had no idea what to do. So I did the only thing that I could think of, which was to go into my bed and bury myself in the covers. I covered my ears and face and didn't want to see or hear anything that was going on. I just stayed like that for the longest time. I was trying to just block it all out, so I didn't hear anything, and I had no idea what the guy in our house was doing. This went on for a very long time. The next thing I knew though, when I finally decided to uncover myself, I heard a door open downstairs. I was scared at first and about to cover myself back up, but then I heard my parents' voices. This made me feel much better. Still, I did not leave my bedroom. I was still too scared. A short time later, I heard my mom calling my name, and I then answered, saying that I was in my room. She came upstairs and went into my bedroom. The first thing she asked me was what happened with the kitchen window. I guess she thought that I had broken it. I told her about the guy, and then she went downstairs and told my dad. He searched the house, and my mom also called the cops. The cops came to our house and searched it, however, the man was gone. Nothing was stolen either. I have no idea what exactly happened. I had really just been trying to block it all out. My best guess is when I saw the man enter our house, maybe he saw or heard me. If he did, if he had thought nobody was home, perhaps that was enough to scare him off. I'm just grateful that everyone ended up being okay. That was my scariest experience from being home alone as a kid.